Close your eyes for 1 second and imagine someone tells you that every time they hear a musical note, not see, not think, hear, they also see a physical burst of color floating in the air in front of them. Warm amber for a low cello, electric blue for a high violin. Always the same, involuntary, as real as the wall you're looking at right now. And then imagine they say, "Doesn't everyone experience that?" Welcome to the world of synesthesia, and by the end of this video, you may not be entirely sure which side of the line you're on. I'm Dr. James, and this is where the science of the brain gets genuinely strange. Let's establish one critical fact right away. Synesthesia is not a disorder. It is not a hallucination in the clinical sense. It is not the result of a drug, a brain injury, or a creative writing exercise. It is a stable, consistent, involuntary neurological condition in which stimulation of one sense automatically and immediately triggers an experience in a completely separate sense. The person doesn't choose it. They can't turn it off. And when you ask them to describe a color they heard last Tuesday, they'll give you the exact same answer they gave you 3 years ago. Researchers estimate that somewhere between 3 and 4% of the global population has some detectable form of synesthesia. That's hundreds of millions of people walking through life, experiencing reality through a set of perceptions the rest of us simply don't have access to. They're not broken. In many measurable ways, they're wired differently, and often in ways that create extraordinary advantages. Now, there are over 60 documented varieties of synesthesia. 60! But let's walk through the 3 that have the most scientific documentation and will give you the clearest window into how this works. The first, and by far the most studied, is called grapheme color synesthesia. A grapheme is simply a written character, a letter or a number. For people with this form, every single letter and digit has a specific, permanent color. The letter A might always be red. The number 7 might always be a deep forest green. The word Monday appears in their mind as a specific visual palette the moment they read it. These aren't associations they built, like remembering that stop signs are red. These colors are perceived. They appear automatically. Here's the test that proves this isn't imagination. Researchers use something called the Stroop interference test. They flash the number 5, but they print it in the wrong color according to that person's synesthetic map. A synesthete will pause, take slightly longer to process it, because 2 pieces of information are competing. That processing delay is measurable. It shows up in brain imaging. The color experience is real enough to create cognitive friction. The second variety is called chromesthesia, or sound-to-color synesthesia. When a specific pitch, instrument, or piece of music plays, the person sees colors in their visual field. Not imaginatively, they perceive them spatially, like moving shapes or flashes of light in the room. Composer Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov, painter Wassily Kandinsky, jazz legend Duke Ellington, all described this experience. Kandinsky literally organized his paintings around the idea that color and sound were one thing. His art was not metaphor, it was documentation. But the third variety is where things get truly difficult to believe until you look at the neuroscience behind it. It is called lexical gustatory synesthesia, and it means that when you hear a spoken word, any word, you immediately taste something specific on your tongue. The name John might taste like cold, stale bread. The word telephone might taste like a slightly overripe banana. These are consistent. They don't change from day to day. They are as automatic and involuntary as the startle reflex. One of the most documented cases involves a researcher named James Wannerton, who spent decades cataloging the taste triggered by every word in common usage, thousands of them, mapped, consistent across decades. When scientists put Wannerton in an fMRI scanner and played words aloud, they saw activation not just in his auditory cortex, which is expected, but also in the gustatory cortex. The taste centers of his brain were lighting up in response to sound. The sensation was real. The cross-activation was real. The map was accurate. So how does this happen? What is actually going on inside the brain? The leading explanation involves the concept of neural cross-activation. During early brain development, there is natural pruning of connections between sensory regions. Neurons that fire together wire together, and those that don't connect get systematically eliminated. The current best theory is that in synesthetic brains, this pruning is incomplete. Connections that should have been severed remain. The auditory cortex still has a live wire running directly into the visual cortex. The language processing area still has an active connection to the region that processes taste. What's remarkable is that this isn't a defect in the architecture, it's an architectural variation, and the regions involved are functioning entirely normally on their own terms. It's simply that they have more neighbors than expected. Now here's where it gets genuinely exciting. Synesthetes, on average, show dramatically superior performance in two cognitive domains, memory and pattern recognition. A person with grapheme color synesthesia can remember long strings of numbers or words because they experience them as visual color sequences, essentially encoding data in two simultaneous formats. Memory competitors around the world have used deliberately trained color number mappings to mimic exactly this advantage. And creativity? The link is striking. Synesthesia appears at dramatically higher rates among artists, writers, composers, and mathematicians than in the general population. Vladimir Nabokov, synesthete; Franz Liszt, synesthete; physicist Richard Feynman, synesthete. This isn't coincidence. Cross-sensory activation may produce a natural tendency to form unexpected conceptual bridges. The brain that sees color in a letter may be the same brain that finds the connection no one else noticed between two unrelated ideas. Now, here is something worth sitting with. Most synesthetes discover their experience is unusual only when they casually mention it to someone who doesn't share it. They grow up assuming everyone sees colors when they read, that everyone hears a sound and smells a faint odor. The realization that their experience is different doesn't come with a diagnosis, it comes with a conversation that suddenly breaks apart a lifelong assumption. Mild, subclinical forms of synesthetic processing may be far more widespread than the 3 to 4% figure suggests. Some researchers believe that the basic architecture for cross-sensory activation exists in almost all human brains, just dialed to different intensities. When you read the word lemon and involuntarily feel a slight puckering sensation, that is a form of cross-modal processing. When a piece of music makes you feel physically warm or cold, that is neighboring territory. The border between synesthete and typical perceiver may not be a wall, it may be a dial, and the research is beginning to suggest that understanding synesthesia doesn't just tell us something about 3% of people, it tells us something about how all human consciousness stitches sense, memory, emotion, and meaning into what we experience as a unified, singular reality. Your brain right now is not passively recording the world. It is building it in real time from a patchwork of signals, predictions, and cross-referencing between regions that are in constant, overlapping conversation. In the synesthetic brain, some of those conversations are simply louder. If this episode changed how you think about your own perception, hit like and subscribe, because we're just getting started on what the brain can do.